You think it's all over for Fergie, the former Duchess of York? Well, think again. As ever, let me explain. Morning, nice to see you, chums. Thank you so much for joining me today, and welcome one and all. You know, it's interesting, isn't it, when you look at these stories that evolve of the good and the great that get fallen down. I don't know, sorry, I haven't had a wave of it. I don't know about you. They do fascinate me. And in particular, as many of you know, I like the Perfumo scandal, simply because at that particular time, it was a sensational story, wasn't it? When you think a government minister, girls of ill repute, you might say, Christine Keeler, Mandy Rice Davies, and I met them all in the fullness of time. And then, of course, it brought down the government. People were like, oh, that wouldn't happen again. Scandals just keep going on and on and on. And ultimately, when you think about it, they are there for that simple reason, aren't they? They keep the sort of machinery going because human life is a scandal. Some people will say that this particular story, well, there's no bigger scandal. And this is, of course, the falling down in grace of Sarah, the Duchess of York. Now, when you think about it, as I've said, you look at this particular individual and she's had everything that possibly anybody could wish to have. She married into the world's most famous family. She was welcomed. She got on incredibly well with the late Queen, so much so that she then took in her corgis to look after, if you remember that. Sarah then decided to pivot out and do all the sensational stuff, which of course many people might say the likes of Meghan and Harry picked up the mantle and did the same thing. She did the Oprah Winfrey interview, she did the tell-all book, she's utilised the title in many different spheres to make sure that she's kept herself, some might say, financially solvent. What's emerged, of course, is that Sarah is not financially solvent, but some other people decided to assist her, if, of course, that is true. As I say, what's interesting in these documents is nothing's actually concrete because the muddy waters are not very clear. But the mainstream media will just seize on the fact that this particular person paid $15,000. I would suggest, actually, that would be far more money, right? But Sarah, now without the title, is going to struggle. She's lost big film deals. She's lost book deals. She's lost endorsements to charities, all of that sort of stuff. So there are problems going around that world. And as I said in a previous video, Prince Andrew is not short of a bob or two, as we say in the north of England, right? He's never going to be down with you and I, for instance, looking at the bargains for the yellow stickers in the local supermarket. It simply doesn't work like that. It's a different world. And even if they're ostracized to another country, let me tell you, things will be radically different to say what would happen here. But now what I can tell you is that while Sarah's lost many of her publishing deals, and these are publishing deals that would have been very lucrative for her, particularly with the historical novels and things like that, there are other things now being offered from major publishing houses in the fullness of time. And the idea really is that once again, Sarah sits down and tells her story. Now you might think, oh goodness, again, but of course people are always ready and willing to find out the inside story. And what better to sit down with a woman giving her version of events. Whether you want to believe it or not, there is the person at the epicenter of this story. Now, according to an excellent source, this particular deal from two major publishing houses, which I have to say remain secret at this point, but from an excellent source in that industry, would dwarf the money that Prince Harry got for his book Spare. And this is because they see this as a far more salacious book, a far more sort of story that could sell around the world bigger. And when you look at Harry, whichever way you look at it, it's just one person kicking back against a family. Sarah Ferguson has met everybody along the way. There would have to be insider stories about the late Queen. There would have to be her associations with certain individuals, the stories behind, say, pictures with her and Harvey Weinstein, with P. Diddy. They would want a lot of bang, as they say, for the buck. Now, where they're at right now, of course, is this: we're very interested. I'm not suggesting for one moment that this is going to be activated within, the next sort of 3 weeks or something like that. But this is what's going on. Now, what happens with this sort of stuff is this. This really depends on where Sarah herself finds her independently financial, whether, of course, Andrew and Sarah stick together. There are stories going around from excellent sources that, there are problems afoot because each is starting to do the blame game. But whichever way you look at it, this again, and I wouldn't say this would put Sarah Ferguson in a financial freedom, because the way Sarah lives and spends, this will be like lunch to you and I, and I'm jesting, but you know what I mean. So moving forward, this is truly what's going on behind the scenes. Never believe the fact that the mainstream media are wiping the hands of these people. They can sniff a book, and Sarah Ferguson definitely can generate clicks, book sales, and once again, high readership. It's a developing story. When I know more, you'll know more. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.